This Saturday, the 11th of October, WWE presents Crown Jewel from Perth, Western Australia, at the RAC Arena. WWE is going back down under for Crown Jewel, and we could see several high-profile moments at the upcoming PLE, including some possible major debuts. Does Paul Triple H Levesque have some surprises up his sleeve in the form of main roster or just general WWE debuts? We're going to let you know 5 possible major debuts that could take place this weekend at WWE Crown Jewel Perth. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of stories to get into in the world of professional wrestling. And before we get into today's countdown video, we're going to be talking about possible major debuts that could be taking place this weekend at WWE Crown Jewel Perth. As I mentioned, WWE is going back down under for the latest PLE offering, set to take place at the RAC Arena in Perth, Western Australia. And as I mentioned, Paul Triple H Levesque could have some major surprises up his sleeve in the form of possible major debuts. We're going to get into 5 possible major debuts that could take place at Crown Jewel Perth. Let's begin with the current WWE NXT champion, Ricky Saints. Now, I feel like every single time I do one of these WWE PLE possible major debuts that could take place at the upcoming event, Ricky Saints' name keeps coming up over and over again. Why? Well, because he's been rumored for a possible main roster debut ever since he signed with WWE earlier this year. Now, it was reported when he signed with WWE that the plan was for him to be in NXT for a short period of time before getting called up to the main roster. Why? Because he's on main roster money. And when he was with AEW, of course, he was a featured player there. He won the Owen Hart Foundation Cup tournament, former AEW Tag Team Champion, FTW Champion, was a featured player as mentioned on that show. Therefore, coming in and going straight to WWE's developmental system was mainly seen as just a sort of pit stop for him. He had signed with WWE in February and they'd already kind of factored in all of the build to WrestleMania at the time, so the best thing to do was keep him on NXT, let him get his feet under him. Then post-WrestleMania, he'd be called up to the main roster. That really hasn't happened just yet. We're still seeing Ricky Saints in NXT. He very quickly won the WWE NXT North American Championship. He then dropped it to Ethan Page, and then he had a bit of a rivalry with Page, and then Page ended up defeating him. And I think a lot of people thought, okay, that means Ricky Saints is going to get called up to the main roster. That didn't happen. Instead, Ricky Saints moved on to the WWE NXT Championship. He's the current WWE NXT Champion. And I know a lot of people have said, well, because he's the NXT Champion, that means he's really unlikely to be called up to the main roster. What if that's all part of the plan? What if part of the plan is to make people second guess and make people go, well, he's definitely not going to be called up to the main roster. He's holding the top championship in NXT. Like that means anything to prevent him from going to the main roster. We've seen people get called up to the main roster while still holding NXT's biggest prize. Kevin Owens is a great example. He got called up to the main roster whilst he was the NXT champion a decade ago. He answered John Cena's United States Championship Open Challenge. He then feuded with John Cena whilst he was the NXT champion. Of course, eventually he dropped the championship to Finn Balor, but he was on the main roster during that period of time. So if plans dictate or if sometimes an opportunity presents itself, they can still get called up to the main roster. Now, he has been linked with a possible move to the Vision on Monday Night Raw. Of course, the faction led by the likes of the World Heavyweight Champion Seth Rollins, in addition to Paul Heyman. Of course, you've also got Bron Breakker and Big Bronson Reed. And there is a lot of Vision influence on this show in Perth. Of course, you've got Roman Reigns versus Big Bronson Reed in an Australian street fight. So given that anything goes and outside interference could and probably will definitely be a thing, you could see a new member of the Vision getting involved in that. But also, you've got the leader of the Vision in Seth Rollins, the World Heavyweight Champion, facing off against SmackDown's undisputed WWE Champion Cody Rhodes, with the winner winning the WWE Men's Crown Jewel Championship. Maybe another world champion in WWE in the form of Ricky Saints wants to be involved in that. And of course, he's got ties to Cody Rhodes too. Of course, he's a very close friend with Cody Rhodes. He's openly stated several times that Rhodes was one of the reasons he got into AEW. Infamously, when Rhodes was returning at the Royal Rumble back in 2023, Ricky Saints was spotted on CCTV backstage when he was even under contract to AEW. So there's lots of different ways in which Saints could arrive on the main roster if indeed he makes his main roster debut at Crown Jewel Perth. Whether or not that's actually a thing, time will tell. We'll have to wait until October 11th. Now, before we move on to the next name in this major debuts countdown list, a reminder that this video is brought to you in collaboration with all of our great affiliates. That includes NordVPN. You can see right there that if you're in the United States, you can get up to 77% off plus 3 months extra free. All you've got to do is scan that QR code right there. You can click the link in the video description below. It'll be pinned in the comment section as well. And why am I talking about NordVPN? Well, because it's time for another WWE PLE. This is the second WWE main roster PLE that is going to be streaming on ESPN as part of the brand new media rights deal between Disney and between WWE. Now, that means all the main roster PLEs have moved from Peacock over to ESPN's new direct-to-consumer streaming service, and a lot of people are questioning if they can afford it. Beginning with WrestlePalooza, they said, you know what, I'm out. I just can't afford another streaming service. I can't afford to have Peacock, to have ESPN, and then I've got to get cable to watch USA, and then CW, and then Netflix for Raw. It's just too much. But what if I told you you can watch all of your WWE content through one Netflix subscription? Well, you can if you have a VPN like NordVPN. All you've got to do, get NordVPN, then change your location to an international territory where WWE airs exclusively on Netflix. Like here in the UK, we get Raw, SmackDown, NXT, main roster PLEs, including Crown Jewel, NXT PLEs. We get to watch Saturday Night's Main Event for free on YouTube. We're going to be watching John Cena's final match for free on YouTube, and you can too. All you've got to do is get NordVPN, use our link, save yourself some money. You can support the channel in the process. Your support is greatly appreciated. All right, let's move on to the next name on the countdown list, and that is another former NXT North American champion in Tony D'Angelo. Tony D, yes, the Don of NXT. Is he on his way to the WWE main roster? Well, after he was written off and seemingly killed off WWE NXT television over the summer, a lot of people went, well, surely, finally, after doing pretty much everything there is to do, apart from be the NXT champion in NXT, he's on his way to the main roster. Now, a recent report had suggested that maybe wasn't the case. Now, let's backtrack a little bit here. Tony D'Angelo has been a staple of this generation of NXT television since his debut with the brand back in 2021. That was NXT 2.0, if you remember those days. Now, back in July, seemingly the final nail was put into the coffin of the Tony D character, the D'Angelo family storyline, when he picked up the victory over Channing Stacks Lorenzo and Luca Crusifino. There'd been a bit of a Civil War storyline going on there. Now, D'Angelo would go on to compete 2 more times at NXT live events against Anthony Luke before appearing in a segment on the July 29th episode of NXT, where he was confronted by a shadowy figure before disappearing from WWE's radar completely. So there had been rumors that maybe he had been killed off the same way that other characters associated with the storyline or with the Tony D character had been killed off before they moved up to the main roster. And it was kind of reminiscent of the Sopranos finale. We go straight to black and you don't really know what's happened to the main character. It led to a lot of people going, he's been killed off, he's got to go to the main roster. There had even been reports suggesting that he was indeed going to the main roster, but the Tony D character was still going to be the same, but maybe tweaked a little bit, maybe toned down, maybe elevated up. You never know, but there was going to be tweaks, but he was on his way to the main roster. Well, last week in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, it was reported by Dave Meltzer that Tony D'Angelo had requested time off from WWE, and his absence from the company isn't injury related. Now, that doesn't mean he isn't on his way to the main roster. That just means he's having time off. Now, obviously, he could be having time off from NXT, and he's going to be coming back to the developmental brand, but you kind of question why that would be the case. As I said, he's done everything there is to do, pretty much. You know, he's been the North American champion, he's been a tag team champion, he's held the Heritage Cup, he's kind of done it all, and he's been in that system for a long time. He's been there for 4 years. So now's the time to get called up to the main roster. Now, is that in the form of getting involved in the match? Maybe. Maybe he's a new member of the Vision. Or maybe it's just in the form of he's going to appear, or there's going to be a vignette, Tony D coming soon to Raw or to SmackDown or something like that. So it feels like despite taking time off and requesting time off, D'Angelo coming to the main roster is nothing short of a formality, I would suggest. So it could be as soon as Crown Jewel, or he could have more time planned off, and then he's going to be going to Raw or SmackDown. Next up, the NXT North American Champion, Ethan Page. Ethan Page certainly is a name also that's been linked to a main roster call-up for quite some time. There's an argument to be made that one of the most successful signings that WWE has made over the last couple of years is Ethan Page. Now, he came off a run in AEW where towards the end, certainly, was a lot of creative frustration. Maybe he wasn't viewed as highly in AEW by Tony Khan and his team, as high as he necessarily thought that he was going to be pushed in that company. Since he's come into NXT, he's been a revelation. He won the NXT Championship very, very quickly. He's the current NXT North American Champion. He's doing the whole sort of Canadian storyline with that. He's got a Canadian version of the NXT North American Championship. He has made a couple of appearances on SmackDown, performing on commentary, and there have been rumors possibly that he could be called up because of that. That was kind of a test to see how he did on the main roster. He's a prominent figure in NXT. Lord knows he's ready. I mean, he's a guy who's been pro wrestling for the longest time ever. It kind of feels a bit strange, doesn't it, to suggest that Ethan Page, at the age of 36 years old, being in pro wrestling for close to 2 decades, should even be in WWE's developmental territory. But he's going down a storm, as I mentioned there, winning the NXT Championship, winning the NXT North American Championship. He has been really one of the bright sparks of NXT in recent months. So because of these performances, many people are saying, well, he should just get called up to the main roster. I mean, he can do kind of anything. So the question is, when it comes to all of this, when and where? Could it be Crown Jewel Perth this weekend? Well, he did recently have a situation where he was teaming up with Chelsea Green in NXT. Of course, Chelsea Green being a main roster talent. And there has been suggestions that WWE Creative has seen pitches saying, why is this in NXT? They should be called up to the main roster. We can have Chelsea Green and Ethan Page being together on the main roster. It doesn't matter if Ethan Page is still the NXT North American Champion. He can hold the championship, go back and forth. It's not as if there haven't been talents that have been NXT champions while still being on the main roster. People like Dominic Mysterio have won the North American Championship whilst being main roster stars, and actually it would be a good way to continue to introduce him on SmackDown. So maybe he's a part of the secret Hervis, and you kind of play off the fact that it's kind of a patriotic USA style gimmick, but you've got excuse me, 2 Canadians kind of doing that. You could do that, or as I mentioned, he could also become a part of the Vision. There's been reports linking him to possibly being called up to the main roster as part of the Vision for quite some time. And once again, you've got several Vision related matches on this show, whether it be the Australian street fight between Roman Reigns and Bronson Reed, or possibly in the men's Crown Jewel Championship match as well. Ethan Page, again, having ties to Cody Rhodes due to their time in AEW. I think actually the debut match that Ethan Page had in AEW was the Face of the Revolution ladder match back in 2021, a match that Cody Rhodes was in at the time. So there's lots of different ways that they could be linked together there, and many people have suggested that the Vision need that kind of fool guy in that faction, somebody that can take bumps, somebody that can eat pinfalls. You've got to protect Bron Breakker, he's maybe the next face of the company. You've got to protect Bronson Reed, he's a monster. You've got to protect Seth Rollins, he's the World Heavyweight Champion. So maybe you need that guy. You can do a bit of everything. He can talk, he can work, and he's also credible when he needs to be. So Ethan Page, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of the current NXT North American Champion being involved this weekend. Next up, Lance Anoa'i. Now, every single time we do these videos, we always bring up Lance Anoa'i's name because he feels like he's the other member of the bloodline that still hasn't been called up to the main roster. He came in around a similar time to Hikuleu, who's now Talatonga on the main roster, despite being with the company for almost a year, well, over a year, of doing nothing, not appearing on television. A couple of dark matches a couple of weeks before he made his main roster debut. That was about it. And ever since Lance Anoa'i signed with WWE, there had been rumors that, well, he's going to get called up at some point. He's going to be involved at some point. But when he was signed, he was injured. A new report had suggested that actually he's had another injury. Despite being signed to WWE since 2024, he's yet to appear on NXT. He's yet to appear on Evolve. No one's seen him because he's been injured the whole time. Now, as I've said, there is bloodline influence on this show. Roman Reigns is facing off against Bronson Reed. We've seen him be partnered up with the Usos in recent weeks, and there is tension between Jimmy and Jey Uso. One would think they're probably going to be involved in that Australian street fight. Maybe that's the time for Lance Anoa'i to show up, and maybe Lance Anoa'i's with this new version of the Bloodline. Maybe he's against this new version of the Bloodline. Maybe he's involved with Jey Uso. Maybe he's involved in Jimmy Uso. There's lots of different perspectives that he could go there. Maybe he's involved in Solo Sikoa. Solo Sikoa, on a recent episode of SmackDown, has suggested that his family, his MFT, is missing something. A lot of people have assumed that something is Tama Tonga and him going to be returning to WWE television. He's been out since just before WrestleMania. But maybe that something is something we haven't seen before, which is Lance Anoa'i, and maybe he's going to be going back after Roman Reigns, and maybe he's going to be going, aligning with the vision in the process. That could be a possibility, even though it feels unlikely due to his injury concerns. And finally, could we see the master, the ruler, that being Obafemi, the former NXT champion? Many people have wondered, after Femi dropped the WWE NXT Championship to Ricky Saints at No Mercy last month, he's got to be going to the main roster, right? Surely. There's nothing else for him to do. He's a dominant force in NXT. He was one of the longest reigning North American champions of all time. Dominated NXT while North American champion. Then very soon after dropping the North American Championship, he becomes the NXT champion. One of the most dominant NXT champions of all time. That's his gimmick. He's the ruler. He just completely bulldozes everyone. Nobody can really touch him. You've had The Undertaker put him over on NXT television. Now he's no longer the NXT champion. What's there left for him to do in NXT? Not that much. Maybe it's time for him to be called up to the main roster and make money, because that's exactly what Obafemi is. He is money. Now, there was a report last week from Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that said that despite people speculating and suggesting that Femi would be on his way to the main roster after dropping the championship, Femi's still in plans for NXT moving forward, so he's not going to be leaving that brand anytime soon. But you would say to that, it's a Meltzer report in 2025. WWE either actively F with Meltzer sometimes by leaking him incorrect information and then going out their way to disprove him, or Meltzer just gets it wrong because he's not as good as he used to be. So just because Meltzer said it in the Wrestling Observer newsletter does not mean it's not going to happen, does not mean it's gospel. In fact, if anything, with recent trends, it would maybe suggest quite the opposite. Maybe Femi is a certainty for the main roster. So there's lots of different directions that Obafemi could go in. You could see a situation where one would think maybe he doesn't need to be in the Vision. Does the Vision need any more powerhouses that need to be protected? That would kind of be overkill, wouldn't it? If you've got Bron Breakker, Bronson Reed, and Obafemi in that faction. My goodness me, that's a lot of meat there, isn't it? That's a lot of strength, that's a lot of power. Who takes the pinfalls there? So I don't know if that would necessarily work out. Maybe he's backup for Roman Reigns against the Vision in this street fight with Bronson Reed. Maybe he gets involved in John Cena versus AJ Styles. We were saying that John Cena's kind of replaying the hits in his retirement tour, facing off against people that he's faced off against before in his career. Maybe Obafemi's going to get a massive rub from John Cena in one of his final appearances. And he goes after the greatest of all time to make a statement. If WWE is serious about pushing Obafemi, maybe they get him involved in that. So time will only tell, but Obafemi, the former NXT champion, surely he's got to be called up to the main roster sooner rather than later. Maybe as soon as this weekend at Crown Jewel. So there you go, guys. There are 5 possible major debuts that could take place at WWE Crown Jewel Perth this weekend. What are your thoughts? Let me know your thoughts, your reactions, your hot takes, your opinions in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, as you can see right there. We are on our way to 25k in 2025. That was our goal initially. It was 20k. Now we're on to 25k in 2025. And we're less than 500 to go. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. I will be doing a live watch along and a live post show on Saturday. It's a 1 p.m. British summertime, still technically summertime over here in the UK. 1 p.m. British summertime start, so we'll be live about 10-15 minutes before on Saturday, and we'll be watching it together. There'll be a post show. There'll be more countdown videos in the days leading up to Crown Jewel as well, so major returns, major surprises, all that fun stuff. So be sure to check that out. Appreciate everyone for tuning in as always, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.